माधव हरे माधवा,
माधव हरे माधव हरे माधव हरे माधवा।
ओम नमो नारायण, ओम नमो नारायण।
हरे माधव हरे माधवा, ओम नमो नारायण।
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद,
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद,
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद,
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद।
ओम नमो नारायण, ओम नमो नारायण।
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 केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव,
केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव।
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधवा,
माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव।
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद,
गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद।
ओम नमो नारायण, ओम नमो नारायण।
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 ओम नमो नारायण,
ओम नमो नारायण।
ओम नमो नारायण।
ओम नमो नारायण।
ओम नमो नारायण,
ओम नमो नारायण।
ये श्री कृष्णचंद्र भगवान की जय,
जय
सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय।
जय।
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी,
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी।
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी,
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी।
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी,
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी।
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी,
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी।
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी,
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी।
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी,
गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी।
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी,
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी।
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी,
श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी।
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी,
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी।
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी,
वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी।
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी,
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी।
गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी।
Hari Om everyone. Can you all see me and hear me clearly? Awesome. From this week onwards, all the Devi groups and other activities will start resuming. So almost after what, 1.5 months, because of the Mahasamadhi camp, we broke and we stopped, and then came Balavihar, and then, oh yeah, we had our brahmacharyans that were down with COVID, and luckily both of them revived, and still I think they have to regain their full energies, but I think glad to have them back. So hope you are also doing well. We will begin with the invocation, then Hari Chaitanya will lead and I'll repeat today's 2 shlokas. Then Brahmacharini Divya, she will go over for 15 minutes, and then Hari will go for 15 minutes, and then I'll sum it up at the end. So let us begin. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Hari.
55 and 56. yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ
yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ
yadbhūtvā na punarbhavaḥ
yadbhūtvā na punarbhavaḥ
yajñatvā nāparaṃ jñeyaṃ
yajñātvā nāparaṃ jñeyaṃ
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet
tiryagūrdhvamadhaḥ pūrṇaṃ
tiryagūrdhvamadhaḥ pūrṇaṃ
saccidānandamadvayam
saccidānandamadvayam
anantaṃ nityamekaṃ
anantaṃ nityamekaṃ yat
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet.
Hari Om. So a while ago, a long while ago, the verses leading up to 55 and 56, we had seen the explanation of what a Jivan Mukta is like. Now, after that point, usually, is there anything left to say? And of course, we have another 10, 15 verses left. So what does Adi Śaṅkarācarya ji continue to talk about after explaining the ultimate lakshanas of a Jivan Mukta? What is left to speak about is to know the glory of this knowledge, that to re-inspire that student again, that this is what we are reaching for. This is why it's glorious to even attempt this difficult path. So in this particular, the last verse and 54 and 55 are very similar in the tone that they're taking in the explanation, that in relation to any aspiration that we can think of, nothing is greater than realizing Brahman. Because everything that we can aspire to in one way or the other is finite, and therefore cannot be eternal sukha, satisfaction, ananda of any form because of the nature of its finitude. And therefore, Brahman, that which is infinite, is the only goal that is worth seeking after living through all of the other aspirations that we have. They are all just conditioned reflection and not the source itself. And so that is why we're told that the glory of reaching this knowledge is to attain that infinite, that we're reaching that very source itself. So in this verse, we begin with yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ. Having seen that, there's nothing else worth seeing. So this is to be taken in from the highest standpoint, that once, let's take the classical example of the rope and the snake. Once you have seen the rope, there's no more seeing the snake. Even if an iota of an aspect of the snake remains, then we haven't reached that state yet. So in the same way, having seen that source as a subjective experience, nothing else is worth seeing. So why do we normally see in our vyavaharic world? Why are we looking for something? It's usually to fulfill a desire of the ego. And again, that nature of finitude comes up, that the ego is limited, and therefore to get rid of the pangs of fear and unhappiness that is caused by that limitedness, the ego constantly has desires. So once we have reached that state of infinite, that there is no limitation, then there's nothing left worth desiring, there's nothing left worth seeing. So having seen that, there's nothing else that's worth seeing. Then the next one is having become that, there's nothing else to become. Meaning that having reached that ultimate substratum, there's no more becoming. Because as of right now, when we think of becoming on a day-to-day life, I am this kind of person, I, have this kind of intellectual capacity at this point. Tomorrow I learn a little bit more, and so I become even more intelligent. Or maybe in the past I was, emotional and constantly raving and triggered at any second. And so maybe through a little bit of sadhana, I've become a little bit more controlled emotionally. So I'm constantly changing who I am on a day-to-day basis. Take it for a further scale, literally changing from a child all the way to old age, or ultimately even changing one life to the other, that cycle of rebirth. It's a constant cycle of becoming and becoming and becoming. But once we again remove all that limitation, we have become that ultimate infinite state that is the source of everything, that permeates everything. So becoming that, there is no more becoming. And having known that, there is no more knowing. So a really good analogy that was given was that right now our knowledge is, let's say I know science, I know math, I know literature. That knowledge is limited to that subject itself. Just because I know calculus doesn't mean I suddenly know how to speak Marathi. So in an analogy, having known a necklace only limits me to the knowledge of a necklace. But if I have the knowledge of gold, then I have the knowledge of any effect that come out of gold. Then I can, so a goldsmith is a great example. They can see any ornament and be able to analyze its value because they have thoroughly understood the properties of gold. So knowing the cause automatically gives you the knowledge of all of its possible effects. So knowing that ultimate source of everything, there's no more like desire to know any of the other effects which are limited in nature. So the ultimate point is that these two verses is to constantly keep our mind in check. That it's asking us to evaluate our life and ask ourselves, what do we want? In some form or the other, there's always the, I want to see this, I want to attain this, I want this kind of joy, I want to become this. Any of those adjectives that we saw in the last two verses, our mind constantly has a tendency to pick one of them. This verse is telling us that which you want is not going to fulfill you in the little things, the limited things that you're looking for. There's no need to look in that direction. Look to the highest, look to Brahman. And once you reach that state, there's no more seeking out anymore in any form. So it's a constant reminder for our mind saying that stop being so distracted with all of these limited things. Deny that distracted state of mind that the mind constantly flows and focus on that one source, because having attained that, everything else loses its value because you have attained the ultimate. So verse 56 then kind of gives it that overall feel, saying that if you look at any direction, once you've reached that state, if you look in any direction, all you will experience is that saccidānanda. Whether it's up, down, this way, that way, in every sense, all you will experience is that very state. And so the analogy that can again be drawn is, upon waking up from the dream, once you look everywhere, what do you experience? It is the waking world only. That the waking world alone you can perceive in the waking state, meaning that there's nothing from the dream state that leaks into the waking state. There's absolutely no limitations from the vyavaharic world that comes into the subjective experience of realization. And any limitations that we experience all fold up and merge into that ultimate state. And so there's nothing of the dream that lingers in the waking state. And therefore that statement again, the waking world alone you can perceive in the waking state. So in the same way, any sort of effect of that limitation, whether it's from ignorance all the way to attachment, sorrow, extrovertedness, delusory interests in anything in the vyavahara, even to the sense of individuality, all of that gets folded up and you experience that ultimate state of sat chit ananda. And again, those adjectives given in that second pada is re-emphasizing just how unlimited this is, that it is ananta, endless, nityam, timeless. And because of these two words, there's no beginning or end, which implies that it is permanent. And if it is permanent, it never changes, it's unmutable. And so it's a reminder that not even a single iota of limitedness is ever experienced in this state of Brahman. And any such limited experience is not worth seeking. So seek the highest, merge yourself into that substratum and become Brahman in a sense, become Brahman. And yeah, that's it, Sanji.
It's been so long since we met that I even forgot to chant the invocation shloka. That's how out of it we are. Good to be back. Good to be back. So here the refrain that we have in these two shlokas, tadbrahmetyavadhārayet. Thus realize that Brahman. Now where does thus come from? That means it has to come from a long line of logic that's been given, lots of siddhantas that's been laid out. From the very beginning of this text, we've seen what I think that I am, I'm not. And I can say I see things with my eyes, hear things with my ears. Therefore, I have a certain idea of what I am. That desires get me to act. Those actions gives me certain things. And that is my life. That's how I seek happiness. That's how I get things. Right off the bat, this text has told me that that may be how I've lived for janmas now, but there's something much higher than that. Something higher that's my goal. So concept of what my substratum is, that Atma was introduced. Those lakshanas given. Then I'm to understand why I make that mistake of thinking that I'm this assemblage here, why I'm not really this. All of that was gone in depth. And then that everything in this universe as well, the substratum is that Brahman, and that Jivan Mukta is the one that has recognized this. When that veil of ignorance has been lifted, they know what they truly are, and the way they live, they're nothing but that Brahman. Vyavaharically, they may be just like us, but that knowledge is there. So all of that was clearly given. And now that reiteration is here now, that these Brahma Lakshanas are given, and meditate upon these to understand that even when, after getting this knowledge, it's not that right away I understand. Punaf Shravanam has to be done along with fully understanding this logically, along with getting rid of those lingering erroneous notions as well. So then starting in this 55th shloka now, one idea that really stands out is understanding, as Divyaji asked as well, what do I want? And as an immature sadhaka, I can say what I want is certain kinds of siddhis, having people like me, having this ability to be memorable. All of these things are things that we want. That's what makes us happy in the world. Yet in this shloka, we find the promise given of this knowledge is having become which none is born again in this world. Yadbhūtvā, na punarbhavaḥ, never coming back. Is that the highest thing I desire? That unless I'm that most mature of sadhakas, that idea does not even come in my mind. Why would I desire something if I don't fully understand the implication of it? Imagine a situation where if I remembered everything that happened in my past lives, all the koti janmas that have been there before, that would spur me into action. That would give me that sense of urgency that this has to be the last life. I don't want to go through this again. Unfortunately or unfortunately, we don't remember those previous janmas, but in this shloka, it's given for that mature sadhaka then, that sense of urgency of this has to be my last life. That's very real to them, which is why that lakshana, that having known this, there is no coming back again. That's the seriousness here. Now for this to happen then, because of the desire prompted actions that I perform, new vasanas are built, existing vasanas are strengthened, and therefore that logically leads to me having further lives. The next life is imperative if I act in this way. So here it's given yajjñātvā nāparaṃ jñeyaṃ, knowing which nothing else is to be known, meaning nothing else is to be desired, nothing else is to be acted upon from here on out. That contentment comes from knowing this is what I am. There is nothing more to be grasped, nothing more to get that I don't have right now, because I am pūrṇaṃ, I am everything. So that knowledge setting in puts an end to this seeking of anything in this world of duality, where I want everything that I can perceive, thinking that will give me that happiness. That end of desire is there. Now, if we go to the next shloka, we find a truth here, that every experience that I have is in this realm of duality. Advayam is the Brahma Lakshana given, but if I unit of life, as Gurudev points out in many of his works, unit of life is an experience. The sum of all these experiences I call life as a whole. So any part of my life, either as the micro or the macro, is only an experience. And for that experience, there's the object experienced, the experiencer, and the experience itself. That's only in the world of duality. So if I want to point to something experientially based and say, this is non-dual, that's impossible, yet non-duality is that only truth, Advaita. So that's when it becomes even more clear understanding that to negate all the reality that I give to these experiences, where the reality of deriving happiness from them, the reality of me changing, undergoing various modifications in these experiences, all of that has to be negated. No matter how much sorrow it gives me, no matter how much joy it gives me, these changes are not, forget permanent, not even real in the grand scheme of things. And the other lakshana given here, pūrṇaṃ. The all-pervasiveness is what makes it non-dual. That if it was that there is this Brahman, and then there is everything else, both are existing. This world of perception is there, that's real. This Brahman is also real, a different part. That would break so many siddhantas. The fact that this Brahman is all pervasive, in and through everything that is experienced, that veil of ignorance is what makes me think that all these seeming changes I see are real. I'm not going to that source, that substratum. That's where that ignorance lies. So not looking at just what I perceive, because the quote is often out there, right? Seeing is believing. Vedanta completely turns that quote on its head. Anything that you see means you shouldn't believe it. And there's no truth to anything that is seen, anything that is perceived. And when that sets in, that's a slap in the face, that everything I get joy from, no reality to it, stay away from everything. Is that what it's asking you to do? Yes, you have to live in this world of duality, all the while understanding that there is no reality given to it. And at this point, Divyaji pointed out, we only have about 10 more shlokas left. Now that we're at shloka number 55, it's a great time for us to look back in the text as well and see that whenever these lakshanas here seem out of reach to me, when it says experiences aren't real, after 2 weeks of COVID, tell me experiences aren't real. Tell me there's no body defects. Tell me these things. I have no way of believing that. That's when I have to look back and see all the different lakshanas that have been given with the logic, why this is impermanent, why something impermanent can't be real. All of those building blocks have to be set in place to understand what that jivan mukta is, and then to understand what these brahma lakshanas are. So that iti, that thus is very important in these shlokas. Meaning, if I can't connect with these lakshanas, there has to be the legwork of going previously into the text. That's what I gathered the most from these two shlokas today. That's all I have, Swami.
Thank you both, Hari and Divya. For the last 27 lectures, 27 discussions, we have been going through this beautiful text, ātmabodha, where this Atma Chaitanya and its Swarupa to be understood. Now, once that Swarupa is understood, the Chaturtha Purushartha, moksha, to abide in one's own true nature, and in that intensity, when the prarabdha comes to an end, leave this body, that is called Videha Mukti. If you remember, let me jog the memory. In the 53rd shloka, I believe, yes, just before this segment started, tadbrahmetyavadhārayet, that tagline before it began, the 53rd shloka, upadhi vilayat vishnau nirvishesham vishen munihi jale jalam vyadvyomni tejas tejasi va yatha. Just like the water merges into being water, similarly, this Mahatma who realizes to merge in their own true nature, Atma Chaitanya, which is the Adhara, Adhishthana of everything that which is. Antaha Bahihi. So there is realization, and then there is Videha Mukti. That is mentioned in the 53rd shloka. Now in the 54th shloka, the focus is on jnanam. Jnanam is that which has to be attained to by understanding. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. By shravana, that jnana is attained. So in this particular shloka, the 55th shloka, what is the difference? The difference is that the focus has become jñeyaṃ, worthy of knowing. And what is it that brings this difference? it is almost like an instructional message that is given in the 54th shloka, that this is jnanam and that has to be ascertained. By the 55th shloka, it is ascertained. It is already now my reality. I have ascertained it. It is this jñeya vastu. So that subtle difference of one being a pointer and the other being that I am the very pointed. I am this jñeya vastu. yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ. Having seen this, there is nothing more to be seen, to be perceived, to be entertained. Now in this, as a continuation, that there is nothing superior as a jñeya vastu, there is nothing more to be learnt or known. Why is this important? Because as soon as we, especially in our homes growing up, if you go tell your parents that I have memorized this, I have learned this, I have done this homework, immediately the next thing that is said, go do the next one. So there's always, having done this, now what is the next? Now here in this particular knowledge, yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ, there is nothing more to be seen. This is the ultimate reality. Meaning that which gives us completeness and satiation through and through at all levels. The sense of stability and security, the removal of all fears, therefore sense of stability and security. Then having the tranquility, peace within, which is unshakable. And third is the ananda. That subtle variation will be told in the next shloka. I'll cover that there. When do we experience that ananda? If it is my true nature, why am I not experiencing it? That we will cover in the next shloka. So in this yaddṛṣṭvā nāparaṃ dṛśyaṃ, there is nothing more. Why? Because yadbhūtvā na punarbhavaḥ. Having this abiding experience, self-experience, na punarbhavaḥ. See what happens when I identify myself with this body, mind, intellect, and through this body, mind and intellect, when I identify with the world outside, there is a constant masking that keeps happening. Not just the chin mask, though it has to be worn on the nose and the mouth, people wear it on their chin. So like chin mudra, then there is chin mask. The mask that I'm talking about is completely worn, where you ask a young kid, the kid says, I want to accomplish XYZ. I want to have this much of money, this much of fame, this much of power. So constantly there is a becoming that is happening. Okay, that is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is this ahankara jivatma that I am, in relationship to the world around, I am constantly tossing from one role to the other, one experience to the other, and the experiencer that I am taking up different masks, different roles. As soon as I am in front of this camera, this whole thing that this satsang has, then I am the teacher. When people come to this house that we are living in, and people ask, Oh, Swamiji, who cleans or who cooks or is it? है ना वो कौन वो सर्वेश कौन सर्वेश स्वामी जी you put a tolia on your a towel on your shoulder, then you become the cook. And roll up your sleeves, then you become the washer. You take different roles. More specifically, if I have to expand that example, that bhava, therefore we use the word bhava sagar, that we become so much constantly, consistently, that it has become a sagar. Boond bane sagar, like droplets and droplets and droplets gather to become a ocean. And that many masks that we put. When I turn towards the husband, I become the wife. When I turn towards the children, I become the mother. When I turn towards my sister, I become a sister. When I turn towards the need to own a house, they become a house owner. Then various roles and responsibilities that I constantly keep masking myself in. This bhava is a constant itch. A constant itch wherein we almost feel suffocated with the kind of roles that we play. How long do I need to be playing this? And many parents though very clearly say, I am waiting for my children to get into college, and as soon as I am done, I am done. I am done. They forget that role of being a mother is not done because you dusted off. However a great sadhaka you want to be, those roles and responsibilities cannot be given up, but the identification with it can be given up. Na punarbhavaḥ. While performing it, therefore Gurudev says, freedom is not in action, or not from action, but it is while being in action to be able to be free from that impact of it, the attachment of it. Na punarbhavaḥ. Yadbhūtvā. This is the finality of it. That once you abide in one's own, once we abide in our own true nature, there is no more running around from pillar to post to pillar to post, trying to become something. Now, Vedantically speaking, why are we trying to become all these? If you step back and try to look at it, ātmanastu kāmāya sarvam priyam bhavati. That you are taking up these different roles just because ātmanastu kāmāya, that I am trying to fulfill that desire. Why am I trying to fulfill that desire? Because there is a lack, there is an apūrṇatvam. And from this apūrṇatvam, I am trying to fill it with various roles, various scenarios, various experiences, in trying to find what is it that can give me that fulfillment. And in that effort, mind is constantly filled, agitated, and it gets exhausted and then goes to sleep. Wakes up again, is woken up these days because you have multiple alarms. These smart gadgets now have, you have the ability. In the earlier days, there was one alarm. It'll ring and you wake up. It was like a fire engine, and you knock it down and you're done. Here it is like every 5 minutes you can keep having an alarm. As soon as you're woken up, you start with this. What is it that can fill? Coffee. वहां से शुरू होता है, some hot beverage that has to go in. It starts with those small little things, and we gather the momentum wherein anywhere we see I feel like I'm engulfed in everything. That is called being in samsara. When they say samsara sagara, that sara that I'm expecting, I'm anticipating, I'm running after, that running will never happen any further. That is the ultimate goal. Why? Because all the parameters that I have been seeking and searching have now come to fruition. What is it? I'll repeat it again. Complete sense of security. Nirbhayatvam, abhayatvam. Then shanti, prashanti. Quietude, tranquility within. How can you see that tranquility? You will see the texture that when there is overwhelming situations around, there is no panic attack inside. Whether you are given worth or value, or whether you are not given that worth or value, you are unshaken from within. You can see that textural difference. That there is that prashanti. And such mind, when the Shravana, when it abides in, what happens? That it says yajjñātvā nāparaṃ jñeyaṃ. There is nothing more to be known. Having thus realized, abides in completeness. Therefore, tadbrahmetyavadhārayet brahma iti avadhārayet. Therefore, make this as the ultimate goal of pursuit of our life. Nothing else. Those outside activities of accomplishments and the tenure of successes that it can gain, the limelight that it can bring, are temporary. We have seen it in our lives. Ayaram, Gayaram. Before it came, it also went away. We have been experiencing it. And sometimes that creates an insecurity also. We have experienced that also. But here is where there is the finality of it, having reached where there is no more going, no more movement. So that spatial movements, that is being focused upon in the next shloka, where he says tiryagūrdhvamadhaḥ pūrṇaṃ eva. Tiryag, adaha, urdhvam. In the middle, up, down. Wherever you turn, there is nothing but pūrṇaṃ. Why is there that pūrṇatvam? Gurudev puts it very beautifully. As long as the mind is agitated, we will not find satiation, completeness. See, when we wake up from deep sleep, why do we feel so fresh? Because we are waking up from that pūrṇatva. Therefore, we feel satiated. Now, what is this effort? Is to reach to that state while being awake. If that makes cognizable sense, that I have to reach to that very state while being awake. Meaning what? In very simple words, whenever our mind is unagitated, not running for or running away from, it knows that its stability is within and it is rooted in it. When it feels that sense of peace within, in that there is pūrṇatva. And the moment the mind is soaked in that pūrṇatvam, in the fact that I am complete unto myself, what expresses forth unhindered is called Ananda. If the mind is running or preoccupied with all the things of the Bhava Sagara, which was mentioned in the earlier, there is no opportunity for it to find that peace, and hence there is no Ananda in it. See, the funny thing is, we are convinced from inside out that unless and until I run after these things, my Ananda is not guaranteed. Therefore, there is fear. Yo, if I drop all of that and the most sincere part of this whole equation is, you are not supposed to be dropping the action. That will keep happening, because that is how the prarabdha and the karma, that whole equation works. Even if you try giving it up forcefully and not participating, it will come back and smack at your face later with interest. One cannot avoid that. So while it is happening on the outside, the inside is completely detached, not disconnected, detached disposition that you perform, but in that performance you are not expecting anybody to pat your back or to censure, or there is no expectation from it. You do it because it is the right thing to do. And thus, when the mind becomes calm, in that calmness it finds its fullness. In that fullness, there is that security that it finds. In that security, what flows out, what throbs out, what jumps out from that individual is Ananda Swarupa. So, tiryagūrdhvamadhaḥ pūrṇaṃ. Like all sides, it is nothing but Purnatvam. Just like a well needed paneer, fresh paneer, well needed, nicely you work on it, and then you make a tight ball of it and put it in water, boiling water, and it fluffs up, and that you take and put it in the sugar syrup. tiryagūrdhvamadhaḥ pūrṇameva. There is only sugar syrup. Antarbahishcha tat sarvam vyapya sugar syrup sthitaḥ. With respect to that Rasagulla. Similarly, all across the mind finds that fulfillment, pūrṇaṃ. And there, saccidānandamadvayam. There the experience is, it is Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa. How is it? One without a second. One without a second meaning what? There's nothing other than this. इसके सिवा बाकी और कुछ है ही नहीं. And in that realization, it is a humbling experience, because what have I been running after? Thinking that is real. Because Advayam means what? Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagata, Bheda, Rahita Vastu. That where there is no Bheda Drishti at all. Whether inside or outside, there is only one substratum, and that is my true nature. What about Jagat? Now you have to prove that there is a Jagat. What you see as Jagat is seen as nothing but that Chaitanya Swarupa alone. What we see it as other than it is only Jada Swarupa. Jada meaning inert. Therefore, it entices us and binds us. There is no more such binding to this Mahatma. Anantam nityam ekam yat. Anantam, that which does not have the barriers of space. Nityam, that which does not have barriers of time. Because both these barriers of space and time happen to happen only when the mind, the agitated mind, is running after, running for or running away from, but running. Whenever that happens, there is time and space. But this Mahatma who is established in the self within, there is no more impact of time and space. Don't assume that suddenly there will be no time and space. In Vyavahara, according to Prarabdha, that time and space will have whatever it has to have. But not having the impact of it is understood. They are the only ones that can claim, have you become old? No, I was never born. I will never. There is no death. Therefore, there is no old age. For the rest of us, though we try to make a statement, oh, I am young inside. That is the oldest one. This body at least is a fresh one. That which is inside, that Jivatma, is the oldest one, has been there for millions of lives. Kya baat kar rahe ho aap? From inside I am very young. No, that is the oldest one. The old, new, in, out, all these parameters come into picture only in the Jada Prapancha. So therefore he says, Anantam Nityam Ekam Yat. That is the only truth. Tat Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam. Anything other than that is called Anitya. Mithya. Mithya means what? Satyavat bhati. That which appears as though it is real and existential. But beyond that, there is no validity to it. Such padartha that it is. Anantam nityam ekam yat. Tat brahma iti avadhārayet. Abide in that. Now in these two shlokas, or in the last three shlokas, there is so much to meditate upon, so much to nididhyasitavyam, that it is directly pointing at how one can find the sense of security, abhayatvam, shanti, and ananda swarupa. Isn't this what we are searching for? Aren't these the very things for which we are, we have been running after? Imagine how much we have given value to the capitalistic, materialistic world. Is though we understand or even appreciate it, when it comes to giving this knowledge, people say, Swamiji, deep Vedanta mat padhaiye बच्चों को. Why? उन्हें नॉर्मल रहने दीजिए. Normal means what? That they have to run pillar to post in search of this sense of security, peace and joy, which they will never find. And that is the greatest anyaya that you can do to somebody that you care and love. Am I able to get across? It baffles me. If you say that you truly care for somebody and you want the best for them, isn't this the best? When can I vouch for something to be best and to give it to the person that I care for, care about most intensely? When I value it. When I have a vague experience of it, when I value it, that is when I can say, no, that is okay, but this is where your primary focus should be, isn't it? So we can be better at who we are only if we understand what the Shastra is trying to point at. And there is no other Shastra which will point this blatantly, this clearly, this emphatically, other than our Sanatana dharmic scriptures. Therefore, tadbrahmetyavadhārayet. Where it is my true nature. Beyond that mind which is running into space and time, beyond that is my own true nature where it provides all these things. I have to now listen, understand and abide in it. For which the mind has to be here, available, so that I can apply it. And that is the impact of these 3-4 shlokas. I think there is one shloka more in the same line of thought, and then it shifts the gears. So we will continue this next week. Now that this Devi group has started again, we will continue it from next week onwards. So see you. Oh, we have to chant the Shanti Pata. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. See you in the next satsang. Hari Om.